this keep going. However, there is a good chance I won't make it through all of this, the rest of this story. Now, if you never have studied on the story of Absalom, I began teaching on it last week, and I told you this story, the story of Absalom, would absolutely make a best-selling novel. It would make an awesome miniseries on ABC. It's one of those that just has an incredible amount of story to it that is obviously it's something that we need to know. And as I began teaching that last Sunday, I just more and more I began to realize many people do not know this story. And I know that going into last week when I started teaching this, a lot of people probably had never heard of Absalom, or if you had heard of him, you couldn't have told me who he was or what he did. So I'll cover, and I don't have time to cover and get you back to where we were, so you're going to have to do a little bit of homework and dig into your Bible in 2 Samuel 13 and 14 and read some of this stuff. But basically, Absalom is one of the sons of David. David's oldest son, Amnon, committed an atrocious sin and forced himself upon his half-sister and all of this stuff and attacked her. And, yeah. So it could be on our YouTube. Okay. The audio of it anyway. Amnon viciously attacked his own half-sister, and David, who was king, and I've told you before, David, he was not a perfect leader, but he was God's leader. David made the mistake of not addressing this issue, not doing anything about it, so his son Absalom decided that he was going to overstep his bounds, go around the king, and took matters into his own hands and had Amnon killed himself. David was obviously very upset about this, and Amnon had to flee. Now, what ended up happening is that, Absalom had to flee. What ended up happening, and I'm talking about the spirit of Absalom, the Absalom spirit. And what we're talking about now is where you will find out that the enemy has these avenues, and it is a way that the enemy works in people's lives, and you don't have to be in leadership in a church for this to happen, because you'll find out that the Absalom spirit attacks you in your home. The Absalom spirit attacks you in your marriage, with your children, in your job place, whatever it might be, in your business. The Absalom spirit is one that is very conniving, that the enemy will use. And the enemy preys upon mistakes that leaders have made, whether it be small mistakes, little mistakes. And what the enemy is now trying to do is turn your advocates and to turn your assets against you. So if you're in leadership in a church, if you're in leadership in some way, shape, or form, what the spirit of Absalom is now doing is the spirit of Absalom is now creating rebellion around you. And it is now creating an atmosphere where you are losing control of what's going on around you. And if you have ever dealt with this on the level of your family or whatnot, you'll find out that this very same spirit, the spirit that was in the man Absalom, I call it the Absalom spirit, that very same spirit oftentimes attacks people on a smaller level, whether it be in their family, and you'll find out sometimes that it was simply the devil taking advantage of a situation and causing chaos around you, causing rebellion around you. And what is now happening for King David is King David has lost the trust of a lot of people. He's lost the respect of a lot of people. And it all happened because somebody who should have been submissive in this case, his son, somebody took it in their own hands and was very conniving, rebellious, and sowed seeds of discord. If you've never heard this term before, write this down or think about it. Sowing seeds of discord. Whenever you hear me talk about sowing seeds, you usually hear me talking about, sowing seeds for the kingdom. Whether that might be monetarily, whether that might be something that you are investing spiritually in. What you're doing is you're putting something into the kingdom now that is going to cause a greater harvest later. Now, how many knows that the enemy is an exact opposite or an anti-copy of God. What God will do for good, the enemy will try and do the same thing, but with the opposite effect. You'll find that all throughout Scripture. You'll find that, at the end of time, God is going to mark his 144,000 people, the Jewish people, during the time of the tribulation. These people are his people that are going to make it through. Well, right after God does that, what does Satan turn around and do? He says, well, I'm going to make a mark too. And he puts marks on people. We call that the mark of the beast. And the mark of the beast it's an anti-copy of what God is doing. Well, same thing. What God has designed is we live in a universe here. We live in his kingdom that he has created. And in God's kingdom, there's a principle called sowing and reaping. And whatever you sow, you're going to reap. And whatever you want to reap, you need to sow, right? It's a very simple principle. Well, the enemy has seen that principle in action, and so he says, well, I want the outcome of this whole thing to be chaos and rebellion and discord. I want that to be the outcome. So guess what seeds the enemy needs to start sowing now? When you sow seeds, they are very almost indistinguishable. They don't have an immediate effect. As a matter of fact, you might drive by the same field twice and not know that anything's been planted, if it weren't for the fact that you can tell that they've disked and plowed and stuff like that. And other than that, you can't tell anything's really been done. You can't tell that seeds have been placed in the ground. You don't see them. You don't know it until later. And so the enemy, this thing that I'm describing here, the enemy begins sowing seeds of discord. Now, I didn't get into all of this last week, but I want to show you. When Absalom heard that his sister had been attacked and Amnon was the guilty party and King David's not doing anything about it, the Bible says that Absalom took his sister into his house and said, come here. And ended up keeping her there for 2 years. Now, I have done some thinking on this, and I begin to realize in the last few weeks exactly what Absalom was doing. And to display this, I'm going to need some help. If I can have Jake come up here and help me, and you're going to be here. And what you're going to play the hurt party here, whoever that might be, and I'm going to play Absalom. I'm going to play the Absalom spirit. So the leadership, somebody has done you wrong. Okay? King David has done you wrong, and along comes the Absalom spirit. And the first thing you find with the Absalom spirit is, oh man, I'm sorry about that. Is there anything I can do? Can I help you? Is there anything I can do? So the Absalom spirit, first thing he did was he took her in. I'm here for you. I'm your protector. I'm going to take care of this. Well, that's fine. That's all good and everything. But eventually, she wanted to move on with her life, and so she's ready to go. Oh, no. Don't you go anywhere. No. You're right. I'm going to protect. I'm your protector. I'm here for you. Okay? No, she wanted to move. No. 2 years. Do you understand? Thank you. You can sit down. 2 years she stayed in his house under his protection and his comfort. You do understand that what he was actually doing was keeping her from moving on, keeping her from repairing this part of her life, whatever that needed to be done, keeping her, no, you stay right here. I'm you. And under the guise, under the pretense of, I'm here to help you, he was actually keeping her from being healed. Because healing always involves some sort of leaving something behind and moving toward what God has for you. Healing always involves leaving something behind and moving toward what God has for you. I'm talking about spiritual healing. And I have felt so strongly in the last month as I've been preaching in this church and with you guys, and I cannot shake it off of my mind, off of my spirit. When I preach on Sundays, when I speak a word to somebody, whatever it might be, when I'm praying for this church, I cannot shake it off my mind that God is dealing with many people here and many people in this church community, however you want to look at it, that he's dealing with people who have not let a healing process happen that has been needing to happen. So we're talking about unforgiveness. We're talking about things that have not been able to, you've not been able to move past something. Whatever it is, what God needs to repair is some people that have not yet moved into his healing process. And I can tell you, no, I don't know things. I know that's the first thing people, he knows what I'm going. No, I don't. I have no idea. But I do know this. I do know that God is saying, I really want to bring you into your healing process. But I cannot do that when you want to stay camped out there in the sorrow of how it happened and when it happened. See, Tamar, she was hurt terribly by the thing that happened. And it put a scar in her life. But what God needed to do with her was to bring her into a healing process. Okay, I can get you through this. I can get you out of this process. So God, the enemy now has to send in a spirit, and it is the Absalom spirit. And the Absalom spirit is the one that says, no, you're not going anywhere. You stay right here. I don't want you to forget about this. I want you to dwell on it. I want you to think about it. The Absalom spirit, whether it works through some person, whether the devil is able to use circumstances to do this, what he ends up doing is he does something to keep you spiritually and mentally right there in your hurt situation. I'm not going to forget about this. I'm not going to do this. I have literally talked with people and counseled people who have tried to get out of this hurtful situation, and I have seen such a rebellious spirit on people. I've seen the spirit of Absalom working through people, and I will tell people, like, look, this is what you need to do. We need to move you past this. We need to get you, and this. Well, I don't want to forget it. This what they did to me has caused me this, and I don't want. And I'm realizing what's actually happening is they have developed a crutch in this feeling. As long as I can still call myself mentally scarred and spiritually hurt, as long as I can continue to still call myself that, I can all of my accountability goes there, and now I can say, so the enemy is saying, yes, let me keep you here. Let me keep you in this situation. That's why Absalom was keeping his sister in the house, and I'm going to protect you here. I'm going to comfort you here, because he spent 2 years of sowing discord into her and into people and saying, now don't you forget about what the leader did. Don't you forget about what King David did. Don't you forget how he let you down and he didn't do this right. Don't you forget about that. The Absalom spirit is one who will definitely time and time again make sure that you are constantly in that place of, I'm remembering how they let me down. I'm remembering how they did this, and I'm being reminded of this. 2 years, Absalom sowed the seeds of discord into people to the point where he is now able to tell his men to go out and kill Amnon, even when the king said, don't kill him. And we've all seen that. So now Absalom's in trouble. He knows, got to get out of here, so he flees. And he's gone. And I do believe that he was gone for quite some time. And so from that, now we go to a place where Joab. Joab is the leadership of the military. Joab is the general of the army. And he is, since Jonathan is dead, Joab is now David's closest confidant within his leadership there. And Joab, who has also been somewhat infiltrated to the point where he is really seeing that Absalom, and I'll show this to you here in a minute, Absalom has done such a good job of deceiving people and sowing discord into their mind. The guy has not been in Jerusalem in 3 years, and people are still thinking about him and want him to come back, and still thinking like, man, this is messing up the whole kingdom. The guy's been gone for 3 years, and he's still messing up the whole kingdom. And that's another thing is, you got to realize the Absalom spirit is not an expert of manipulating you where you are. The Absalom spirit is an expert at manipulating your life from a distance. The Absalom spirit is one, he doesn't have to come over here and mess with you. The Absalom spirit can mess with you from over here just by sowing seeds of discord. I can't tell you how many times I have seen, and I warn people about this, And when people have been done wrong, whatever it is, I talk to people all the time. They say, you'll never believe what happened to me at this church. You'll never believe what happened to me at that church, or what this pastor did to me, or what this, and you know, there's something to be said for, you know, people that really happened. It did, and I don't trivialize that. But I warn you, don't let the devil use you to sow seeds of discord there. Because what happened to you, maybe, you know, I don't know the circumstance. Excuse me, I don't know the situation, but I do know this. God is never behind any type of discord. He is not the author of confusion. What the enemy wants is for you to continue to dwell on what that pastor did, or what this leader did, or what this ex-spouse did, or whatever it might be. He wants you to, from a distance, you know, be manipulated by that. Okay? And that is what the Absalom spirit is doing. So Absalom's way off here for 3 years. People are still, you know, saying, you know, we need Absalom back. I can't believe what David did. You know, and all of this stuff that Israel should have been able to get past, but they can't because of the Absalom spirit. So Joab brings in this woman, and he tells her all this stuff to do, and he says, go before the king and tell him this story about you got 2 sons, one did wrong, and now, one killed the other, and now everybody wants to kill this one. And David said, oh, well, they shouldn't, this other one shouldn't fear because that. And she said, yeah, well, what I just described was your situation. You've got 2 sons. One son killed the other one, and now everybody wants forgiveness for Absalom, but you won't bring him back. And so you can see everybody's been manipulated by this. And so what happens is that we're going to keep reading. Let's start at verse 18. All this is happening. Then the king answered and said to the woman, please do not hide anything from me that I ask. And the woman said, please let my lord the king speak. So the king said, is the hand of Joab with you in all this? This is verse 19 of 2 Samuel 14. Did Joab put you up to this? That's what he said. And the woman answered and said, as you live, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right hand or to the left from anything that the Lord the king has spoken. For your servant Joab commanded me, and he put all these words in my mouth of your maidservant, to bring about this change of affairs. Your servant Joab has done this thing, but my Lord is wise, according to the wisdom of the angel of God, to know everything that is in the earth. You see those words right there, to bring about this change of affairs? What is the Absalom spirit wanting to do? He's wanting to change your affairs. He's wanting to be in control. Again, I've got to bring this back. This is just from my observations, from things that I have seen in my life up to this point in ministry. I can tell you that not everyone in the church wants to be a pastor. And a lot of people don't want to be a pastor. But there are people in the church who don't want to be pastor, but they do want to be in control. I have seen that before. I grew up in church like that. I've seen it. I've seen it all my life, seen it as a pastor. And what happens is you don't want... And again, I'm using these examples. You can apply this example to many other things in your life, be your family, be your business, however it is. But people like to be in control. They really like to be in control. And if you don't believe me, ride in the passenger seat with a bad driver. Okay? You like to be in control, right? You don't like... I didn't say anything. Don't. Shh. Anyway. No, not she. I'm thinking, I'm not, who are you talking about? The funny thing is, though, because like my father-in-law and I worked for 1.5 years together in a moving business, and he always drove. And I just learned, and Dustin's not here because he did the same thing, I just learned you just can't watch. Just don't watch. You just got to put your head down and just go. You can't watch. Woo! But yeah, you understand what I'm saying? Sometimes people like to be in control. Okay? People like to be in control. And on that note, people don't like to be controlled. Right? So these are all things of the flesh, and we feel like, submitting to any type of authority goes against those two principles that are flesh, is saying, I want to be in control and I don't want to be controlled, you know. But submitting to authority is an incredible part of growth in ministry. And I can tell you, I've heard Perry Stone say this. Perry Stone has a big, awesome ministry, and he trains a lot of young people. And he's told the story many times about how young people will come to him and they've said, you know, hey, I want to be one day, I aspire one day to be in ministry to the level that you are. You know, to be able to have that level of revelation, to be able to have that level of anointing and this level of ministry to reach as many people as you do. What advice do you have for me? What should I start doing now? So he said, I've been asked that question a million times and my answer is always the same. My answer is clean toilets. What? What do you mean clean toilets? He said, well, if you're asking me where I started, that's where I started. He said, I didn't start in ministry on television up there preaching. I started in ministry cleaning the church, cleaning the bathrooms with my mother, you know, on Saturdays. And that's where I started. He said, so if you're interested in this, there's a toilet brush in the cupboard. Go for it. That's where. And he says, people, you know, I don't want that. You know, I don't want that. And one of the most fascinating things that I ever saw in Scripture, I mean, that really just one of those moments where you just go, your brain just goes, oh my gosh, and it opens up this huge door of your brain just can't take it, and you have to, maybe I'm the only one, I don't know. But these things happen, and you're reading Scripture, and it just goes, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that, and I don't get, and now all this stuff makes sense, and all this other stuff. And one of those moments was this. It is the story of the centurion that came to Jesus. The centurion came to Jesus, said, my servant back home is sick. He's going to die. I need you to heal him. Jesus said, I'll come to your house. The man said, no, I don't want you to come to the house. In fact, you don't need to come to the house. He said, I too am a man under authority. Okay? So you heard him say, I too, I am also. You heard him say that. Now, if I say to you, I am also, or I'm saying this not about me, also, or not just about me, I'm also saying about you. So whatever he's saying about himself, he's saying that about Jesus. I too, I also am a man under authority. Okay? And Jesus never argued. He didn't say, well, I'm not under authority. I don't know what you're talking about. Jesus absolutely knew what it meant to be under authority. In several ways. And this is where things just get crazy and you never can wrap your mind around this. But you do understand Jesus and God are one. But Jesus is the Son of God. These two are separate. These two are one. These three are one. You know, and woo, you know, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and all this stuff. But they're all the same Spirit, but they're all, woo, you know, and now you need to take a nap. But Jesus is the Son and God is the Father. When Jesus was on this planet, he took off his robe of equality. He took off his immortality and put on mortality. He became a man. Okay? He's a man, flesh and blood, but the Son of God. So, if we are to believe Psalms chapter 8, which we do, it says, who is man that thou art mindful of him, but you have made him a little lower than the angels. So when Christ put on a flesh covering, he became that. So in one sense, Jesus Christ is now a man under authority, under the authority of the Father. Yet at the same time, because he's the Son, he is the heir apparent, he also is the Father. You know, me and my Father are one. So he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Yet at the same time, he's a man under authority. And then this is where it blew my mind. Okay, Jesus is a rabbi. He's not a rabbi self-proclaimed. He is an actual rabbi. They call him rabbi. They don't call him carpenter. They call him rabbi. And say carpenter, carpenter, rabbi, rabbi. That's who he was. Not arguing that he never was or could have been a carpenter at some point. We know Joseph was a carpenter. But Jesus' profession was rabbi. To become a rabbi in that time, you start training at age 12, and for 18 years, you train until the age of 30 and begin your ministry, just as Christ did. But you know what you do for 18 years? You submit to the teaching under the authority of another rabbi. So for Jesus to reach age 30 and be a legitimate rabbi, as he was, meant Jesus submitted under the authority of somebody else and was taught as a rabbi for 18 years. So Jesus at age 30 is doing all this stuff, but he knew just as well as anybody as it was to submit to authority. So all that being said, what I'm saying is it goes against the flesh of people. So whenever the enemy brings a spirit like the spirit of Absalom and comes in, it is so easy to get the flesh riled up to attack leadership and to attack and to accept the attacks of leadership. We're hardwired to do that. That's why at any given time, you can look throughout all this country. I don't care who's president. I don't care if it's blue state, red state. I don't care who it voted for. I don't care what year it was. I don't care who was president there, who was president there. I don't care who it was. But when things went wrong, guess who we looked to? And guess who we blamed? You can look back at the economic crisis of the late 70s, and you can blame it on 10,000 different things. There are so many things that went wrong in the late 70s. I'm talking about automobile stuff, just all kind of stuff just went terrible in the late 70s. But ask anybody who was an adult during that time, how did that happen? You know what they'll say? Jimmy Carter. Old Jimmy Carter. That's what they'll say. And not to say, hey, maybe he had something to do with it. I'm sure I wasn't alive then. But I can tell you, Jimmy Carter did not single-handedly do all of that. He didn't do anything to help, but he didn't do it. But guess what? Because we look to the leadership. Because we are hardwired. If there's anything I can do to blame, I can blame that one. And so now things are going wrong, and people, guess what's causing all of the discord in Israel? What's causing all of the discord in Israel is people have allowed themselves to be infiltrated by Absalom, who has been nothing more than a professional gossip, who has done nothing more than sow discord, seeds of discord into people's minds, talking about the king behind his back, telling other people what to think about it. And in the midst of it all, everybody is being disobedient at some level because they are no longer, doing as God has said, and this is God's king that he set up. And in the midst of it all, Israel's falling apart, and guess what they all do? They all look and say, David, King David. So going through all of this, in the midst of it all, verse 28, I'm going to skip ahead to verse 28. Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem. He came back to Jerusalem, but did not see the king's face. So David allowed him to come back. But you're not coming into my throne room. You ain't talking to me. We're not going to do this. Therefore Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king, but would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. David wouldn't see him. So he said to his servant, see, Joab's field is near mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire. Wow. And Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Absalom comes back, and he's not getting his way. And he throws, and guess what he does? He's not getting his way. Joab won't let me see the king. He's not getting his way. The Absalom spirit will show its ugly face as soon as it doesn't get his way. Go set Joab's field on fire. Really? What are you, 4 years old? Go set Joab's field on fire. And the servants did it. They did it. Do you see how much manipulative control he has over people? This is what Absalom said. Go set Joab's field on fire. So Joab arose, came into Absalom's house, said to him, why have your servants set my field on fire? Absalom answered Joab and said, look, I sent to you, saying, come here, so that I may send you to the king and say, why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me that I'm still there. So in other words, saying, why have I been here for 2 years, yet my own dad won't see me? Now, therefore, let me see the king's face, but if there is iniquity in me, let him execute me. So Joab went to the king and told him, and when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king. Then the king kissed Absalom. Now, before we get to there, I'm going to show you exactly what happened. Absalom is trying to continue to be manipulative, and now he wants to get his foot back in the door to leadership because he's got more plans, and Joab won't let him. So this is when the Absalom spirit is working in somebody's life, whether it's in your home, in your circle of friends, in your business, whatever it may be, in the church. The Absalom spirit is still trying to manipulate and get to and hurt the leadership. Whoever is not going to go along with this plan, the Absalom spirit will attack them too. There is going to be collateral damage. The Absalom spirit doesn't care who he's got to attack, who he's got to hurt, whose field he's got to burn. He doesn't care. If you're not with me, I will destroy you. So in the kingdom, the way that the enemy works is whatever he cannot control, whatever the enemy cannot control, he will try to destroy or discredit. Okay? So, I mean, good Lord, if you want to see examples of this, you don't have to look any further than an election campaign. You know, if you can't outdo them good, make them outdo you bad. You got to expose the dirt. You got to dig up some dirt on them. Because you can't outdo them on the good side, so you need them to outdo you on the bad side. And so the Absalom spirit's looking for somebody to help him get to the king, help him get to the leadership. You won't help me? Fine, I'll burn your field. I'll destroy you too. I'll take you down. Absalom spirit doesn't care who he's got to take down, who he's got to hurt. But in the midst of it all, David makes another mistake. The other mistake that he makes, he lets Absalom back in to the king's court. Do you see how the Absalom spirit needs mistakes to be made? He does. And the sad thing about that is leaders are guaranteed to, at some point, make mistakes. You don't have to be a pastor to be a leader. Be a parent in your home. Guaranteed to make a mistake. You are. And that is what the Absalom spirit preys upon. So the Absalom spirit gets another chance. Why? Because David made another mistake. Chapter 15, verse 1. After this it happened that Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. Now Absalom would rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. So it was whenever anyone who had a lawsuit came to the king for a decision that Absalom would call to him and say, "What city are you from?" And he would say, "Your servant is from such and such a tribe of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your case is good and right, but there is no deputy of the king to hear you." I'm going to stop right there. What happened was the king, many, many times, the big part of his time was spent being a judge, acting in the position of a judge, making decisions. People would come from all over the place, and they'd come and they would say, you know, this is the situation, we need you to make a decision. The most famous case of that being when Solomon was king, and 2 women came to him with 1 baby, each one claiming, "That's my baby," "No, that's my baby," "She killed her own baby," accident. You know, that thing, that's an example. That happened. The people come to the king to make decisions. So Absalom would stand outside the gate of the city there and look for people who were coming. And as they're coming in, he'd say, "Hey, you're here from such and such city. You're here for the king to hear your case. There's no deputy here today. What's he doing? What's he up to?" Moreover, Absalom would say, "Oh, if I were made judge of the land, everyone who has any suit or cause would come to me, then I'd give him justice." Ooh, you see what he's doing there, right? He's saying, yeah, there's no one that's going to hear your case here today, but man, if only I were king. if only I were appointed the judge over all of Israel, I would hear your case. You see what he's doing? He's standing outside the wall campaigning. He's not from the throne room. Keep this in mind. He's not standing next to the throne, next to King David, and campaigning to people. No, he's gone outside, and he's gone out here to make sure that, people don't get in there and get the true story. They're going to get his version. So the Absalom spirit is a manipulator of facts. The Absalom spirit is a manipulator of the circumstance. I don't know if there was a deputy or not to hear him, but all the people knew was what Absalom was telling them. The Absalom spirit is dependent upon people believing in the manipulation. The Absalom spirit does not actually have to make the actual situation a certain thing. He just has to get people to perceive it that way. Is there anybody in this room? I would say, I'm willing to admit that there are times in my life that I thought one thing, and I thought it for a long time. And turns out I was wrong. I thought, and I'm talking about you thought, well, so-and-so said, I'll just give you an example. When I was a teenager, there was a person we went to at the church that I don't want to get too specific in this. You can dissect it and figure things out. Not that you're all that interested in my life and all that stuff. But things were happening, and a person supposedly made a comment about me. I never looked into it, never did. And but I ended up spending more than a decade thinking that person was a real snake because they said this. Turns out they never said it at all. Nothing was ever said. I just happened to be manipulated by the wrong person who got me to believe this. And that's the Absalom spirit. The Absalom spirit will get people to believe lies. The Absalom spirit will get people to be swayed in one direction or another. Have you ever seen, or maybe you've been the person, have you ever been so convinced by something that was not even true? You were so convinced of it that even if the truth were told to you, and when the truth was told to you, you didn't even believe the truth. Even if it's proven to you. No, I know that. That's not right. It's not right. I'm trying to think of something right now. I used to have these tidbits of information, things we have always thought were true. Stuff like, how many people grew up and your teacher told you that the only object visible from space is the Great Wall of China? How many people heard that? The only object visible from space is the Great Wall of China. Did any of you guys go to school? They told me that all throughout school. Maybe that's wrong. I went to city schools. So they didn't talk about space and all this stuff. Some of you might have been in school when nobody was in space. I don't know. I think my mom has told me the story of when Sputnik went up, and they brought it. No, you have. I'm telling you, I just remember. I know when it was. It was October 1950. 1957? It was 1957? You were only like 3 years old. Yeah. Everybody do the math. So yeah, what I'm saying is, people say, oh, the only thing you can see from outer space is the Great Wall of China. Well, that's not true. And I know people that later on in high school when we had a teacher say, that's not true. I know you're told that, and people are like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. It's like you've believed something long enough, you were so convinced of it, they can even show you proof and facts, and you still won't believe it. I've seen, and the same thing happens with people's reputations. The Absalom spirit is out to destroy reputations. He's out to go against, and because when a reputation gets destroyed, there are many things you can recover from, but when your reputation gets destroyed, this is why, it's so terrible. And sometimes, I've looked at some of these stories where people, a lot of times, whether it is people in college or even people in high school, I've read stories of people who were excellent star athletes, and they were accused of things that they didn't do, and it ruined their life. It was proven to be false, but it ruined every chance they had. And a reputation being destroyed is a terrible thing. And the way I look at this and the way I see this, once again, this is just things that sometimes it just pops in there and everything makes perfect sense. I mean, good Lord, how many evangelical scandals can come out between the 80s and 90s? It seemed like there was one every other week, right? This one was caught in a hotel room with this girl, and this one is that one, and this one turns out he don't like women as much as he used. It's like every scandal you can think of keeps coming out, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, good Lord, but well, number one, how much of it is true, how much of it isn't, you never know, and you never will know. But at the end of it all, what you end up finding out is the devil was after the reputation, because if I can destroy your reputation, then people won't listen to your message. Because the devil cannot destroy the message. The message of the gospel, Absalom can't destroy that. So if I can destroy the messenger, if I can make everybody believe lies about him or just ruin his reputation in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying everything was a lie. They've made mistakes. David made mistakes. Yes. But Absalom says, I'm going to prey upon that. I'm going to destroy King David over it. So he's telling people, if I was king, I'm just saying. I'm not saying it's an election year or anything. We didn't have elections back then. But if I was king, things would be different. So, verse 5. So it was, whenever anyone came near to bow down to him, that he was put out his hand and take him and kiss him. In this manner, Absalom acted toward all Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Well, that's what he was wanting to do, right? Stole the hearts. Now it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said to the king, please let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I made to the Lord. For your servant took a vow while I dwelt in Geshur in Syria, saying, if the Lord indeed brings me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord. Well, this all sounds well and good now, doesn't it? Once again, the Absalom spirit works under the guise of good intentions. I'm doing this for the Lord, The king said to him, go in peace. So he arose and went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, that you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron. And with Absalom went 200 men, invited from Jerusalem, and they went along innocently and did not know anything. Do you know that I can tell you, when an Absalom spirit hits, whether it's in a church, whether it's in your home, the Absalom spirit takes people with him. And this all goes back to the devil, Satan. When he was cast out of heaven, he made sure he didn't go alone. He took 1/3 of all of the innumerable amounts of angels from heaven and took them with him. Now, I will tell you this, in Absalom's case, he went to Hebron. He's going to Hebron to plot a takeover attack. Now he's garnered all the support of people, and he understands that he can come in, declare himself king, and he's got supporters and people who will allow him to be king, and they can run David out of town. He knows that's going to happen, so he's putting together something. So he says, I'm going over here to serve the Lord. Come on, guys. And 200 men. I have no idea why they're going, but they're going. We're going with Absalom. And all these people have turned against David, and we're going, come on, guys. And he goes. Absalom's plotting a takeover. They didn't know anything. Verse 12, then Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, from a city, from Gilo, where he offered sacrifices, and the conspiracy grew strong. For the people with Absalom continually increased in number. Now a messenger came to David, saying, the hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom. So David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, arise and let us flee, or we shall not escape from Absalom. Make haste to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring disaster upon us and strike the city with the edge of the sword. So the king's servants said to the king, we are your servants, ready to do whatever my lord the king commands. Now, what I find in this, God has shown throughout Scripture, and He's shown me that no matter what happens, God has provided for that situation. And He knows that in that situation there'll come time when you need loyalty. Loyalty is a great measuring stick. Okay? That's why God has to take His time in doing things with you. God has to take His time. He can't turn around tomorrow and give you the great blessing of ministry that you're praying for. He has to take His time in doing it. Why? Because you can't measure loyalty overnight. You need time, and now you can measure loyalty, because loyalty is the ultimate indicator. And so God says, I'm going to make sure that David in this situation hasn't lost everybody. And he didn't. He had loyal people. In my life, I call them, those are the confidants. My wife calls them the backbone. We used to preach on that. Every church has a backbone. And I look at it this way. There are 206 bones in the human body, but only 33 of those bones make up the backbone, vertebrae. It's a much smaller number. It doesn't matter how big your congregation is. When I say congregation, I'm talking about church. It might be your family. It might be a circle of friends or whatever. Doesn't matter how big that number is. You've got a backbone in there somewhere. And God has orchestrated this thing. And God will see to it that you have loyalty when you need it. And David is saying, let's get out of here, let's run. And I want you to see what David is doing. David says, we got to get out of here. I don't want them to destroy the city. I don't want them to destroy Jerusalem. Because if they come and wage a war, they're going to destroy everything. Destroy the temple, well, the temple's not built yet. Destroy the tabernacle, destroy the city. David is wanting to leave to spare the city and to spare the people. The true leader, God's true leader, would allow himself to sacrifice his position in order to save the congregation, in order to save the city. See what I'm saying? So the right person, he was flawed, but David was the right man. You know, do you think Absalom would have sacrificed his stuff to save this? No, he would have come and burnt the city to get what he wanted. But David said, I'm getting out of here because I don't want the city to come under attack. But David has servants. They say, you give us the command, we're going to do it. The king went out with all his household after him, but the king left 10 women, concubines, to keep the house. These are not wives. And the king went out, all with the people with him, and stopped at the outskirts. And all his servants passed before him, and all the Chethrites, the Pelethites, all the Gittites. 600 men who had followed him from Gath passed before the king. And when the king said to Ittai the Gittite, why are you also going with us? Return and remain with the king. For you are a foreigner and also an exile from your own place. In fact, you came only yesterday. Should I make you wander up and down with us today, since I go, I know not where? Return, take your brethren back, mercy and truth be with you. But Ittai answered the king and said, as the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, surely in whatever place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also your servant will be. So David said to Ittai, go and cross over. And Ittai the Gittite and all his men and the little ones who were with him crossed over. And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. And the king himself also crossed over the brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over toward the way of the wilderness. There was Zadok also, and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had finished crossing over from the city. And the king said to Zadok, Zadok is the priest, carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and show me both it and his dwelling place. But if he says thus, I have no delight in you, here I am, let him do to me as seems good to him. Now listen to me. I'm going to tell you right now, I can show you how good the king was. David, flawed man. He's made mistakes. But here's what he's saying. Because Zadok the priest, they're all escaping from Jerusalem. They said, get the ark. They brought the ark of the covenant and brought it. David turns around and sees they're bringing the ark, and here's what he says. He says, guys, God didn't have Moses build that ark to follow me. God had Moses build that ark to follow his presence, not mine. And if God is in this thing and God is going to continue to dwell with King Absalom in Jerusalem, then that's where the ark should be. If God's going to bring me back to Jerusalem, then he'll do it, and the ark will be there when I get there. But that into a real mess, and you're watching, I wonder how they're going to do this, and you look over at the clock, and it's like, oh, it's 7:59. They don't have time to get out of this. I know what's about to happen, and there it flashes up, to be continued, and you're like, no. Well, that's what's happening here. David is on the run. What's going to happen? Now, next week, I can't get into this next week. You might want to read this. It's good stuff. I cannot get into this next week. We're going to be hearing from Pastor Robbie Childers next week, and I will do my best to make sure that we get back into this the following Wednesday, because this is really good stuff. So I want to dismiss you now. I don't want to take extra time, because I want everybody to go downstairs, get a piece of cake, big or small, whatever. Eat it. Please eat the cake and all that. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming here tonight. We will see you Sunday at 10:45. Please invite somebody to come. I feel God has begun ministering with some people here Sunday, people who are in great need. I want them to come back. I want people to come back. Invite people to come. We want to pray with some people, so do your best. I'm going to put something on Facebook tomorrow. Share it. Like it and share it. It's about this Sunday's service, so we will see you guys then. Thanks.